Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the What Worked For You show. Today, this episode is for the ladies in the audience, but guys, if you're married, don't go anywhere. This might also be for you too. Just saying. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I've personally heard myself in having numerous lady friends over the years, and it's the issue of energy, and particularly as we get older. Our guest today, she is the founder of a company called the Hinman Holistic Health Institute. What do? They help women with their health get energized. How much energy? About 3 hours more every single day. Think about it. That's 21 hours a week. That is nothing to sneer at. I've already told her she might want to consider having men clients. We will dive into that as we go. She has been very successful. She was a former Deloitte and Arthur Andersen wealth consultant. She is an author. She is a speaker. She's had tremendous success helping women not just get their energy back, but now make their life better because of their energy, and has been able to take this idea that is very big and turn it into a very successful business. Amanda Hinman, thank you for taking the time to be on the show today. How are you?
Hey, Frank, I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Absolutely. And by the smile on your face, I already know you love what you do.
I
And so I
do.
want,
Yes, I will say this path is, I always say it's like my divine redirection path. It wasn't what I started out of university. I studied accounting and was in wealth management, investment advising, but I think God had different plans for me. So led me astray to where I am now.
well, sometimes when we let astray, beautiful things happen. So I want to start by asking you, and you mentioned God, so I already know you're a woman of faith, which is fantastic. Let me ask you, the passion about connecting health habits to entrepreneurial success. First, for you, before you help others, you got to help you. Tell me about how did that come about in that time?
Yes. Well, first, it was really my own healing journey. Many years ago, about 18 years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is where your thyroid function is definitely hampered and severely held back. So I had, insomnia. I was incredibly anxious. My mind was just would not settle down, hair loss, mood swings, all sorts of different symptoms that were affecting the way I felt every day. Honestly, I felt like I couldn't barely get out of bed and live my life. So when you talk about like why I'm so passionate about helping people to feel energized and to feel confident, because I know what it's like to feel like you're dragging yourself out of bed and the exact opposite of it. And that permeates to everything you're doing in your life, whether it be your career, your business, your family, everything is then affected when you feel crummy all day long. And that was where I was. And that kind of led me on this journey of really rediscovering how to support my body, how to help my body to heal. And shortly after my autoimmune diagnosis, my oldest daughter, who was only 8 years old at that time, had she'd always been, a highly sensitive girl, prone to anxiety, but her anxiety escalated to the point of where she was having crank between like 10 and 15 seizures in a day. It was completely debilitating. Yeah, it was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever had to live through as a parent to see your child struggling and not know how to help her. And every fiber in my being knew that there had to be something more to the story of why I had an autoimmune, why she was now struggling with seizures. And both of us were told that these things can be genetic. And, here's some medication to manage the symptoms. We were told she would likely never be able to drive a car because she was on four different benzodiazepine medications, 12 pills a day, just to make it through a 24-hour period without a seizure. And that's what I said. Like every fiber in my being knew that there has to be something we're missing. It can't just be like, this is what it is, medicate indefinitely. And that's when I went back to school to study functional medicine and totally did a career shift of understanding health and physiology and how our interconnected systems in the body work and how we can help to rebuild that health and rebuild our energy. So that's the long story of saying that's how I moved into the space of doing the work that I do now, understanding how to help women feel empowered, feel clear, have a game plan to radically change their health trajectory. Um, and that has escalated. It's really interesting because now it ties directly to a lot of the women I work with, are business owners, are entrepreneurs, and myself included, because when you have that energy, in fact, a study that came out from Mayo Clinic showed that 86% of the top income earners have a higher energy output. It makes sense, right? We think about your ability to be creative, your ability to be resourceful, to influence, and to lead. That is a direct correlation with how well your body can function at a cellular level and your ability to generate and to utilize energy effectively. So there is a very strong, what I think of, health and wealth correlation that goes hand in hand there.
No, for sure. And I'm going to pause on my list of questions for a moment because I want to ask something that's key. You mentioned your daughter
Mhm.
was 8.
Yes.
And it sounds like when you had your incident, you were also pretty young then, is what I'm.
Yes, I was 33.
So you were 33, she was 8. And when as you shared that story and you said the word feeling the debilitation, kind of just, I can't do anything kind of thing. I
Hmm.
had an experience. I mean, I wasn't much older than you were at the time. I was 38 at the time, where it was like I had some crazy thing happen. No one ever really figured it out. But
Hmm.
what we did figure out is there were some panic attacks. But then I had like this whole pain and chest thing going on. And I kept thinking I was going to die of a heart attack. And the cardiologist, I actually spent one night in the hospital, and the cardiologist was like, well, he literally said to me, well, we don't know what you got, but we know it's not going to kill you, with a smile on his face. I was like, great. And so when you use that word, there's a lot of people. Maybe they're entrepreneurs, maybe they're not. Certainly, it's happened quite a few times with entrepreneurs because I've met some of them. But even for
Hmm.
people that are not, this idea of holistic health, I want to talk about that for a moment because that's your whole institute.
Hmm.
And I remember going to a doctor after going through this whole little panic attack thing. By the way, I solved it through a $67 program I bought online. And I still have it to this day.
Yes.
Thankfully, I don't really use it anymore, but I never forgot. But before I bought it, I remember asking the doctor in the hospital because they told me like your oxygen content was amazing. I mean, it was like top tier stuff. And
Hmm.
I asked the doctor in the hospital, "What's wrong with me?" He's like, "We're phenomenal at break fix operation, but for that you got to go see your general practitioner. We're a
Hmm.
break fix." And he tells us that hospitals are a break fix operation. I went back to another doctor. I went through 3 at the time. And the last one told me, Frank, I will happily bless what you're going to do seeking more natural alternatives. As doctors, we are trained to write prescriptions. And I never forgot that because the honesty in her voice. She's like, we're a
Hmm.
doctor, we do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we're trained to write prescriptions. And so between those two doctors, I never forgot that. So we're going to stop talking about me now. But I just want to know that when you just share that, it brought so much back that quickly to my mind.
Hmm.
Tell us about what really is holistic health. What does it mean for your institute? How have you used it to change your life, your daughter's life? Let's talk about this for a few minutes because I've seen entrepreneurs say the same thing. Maybe they didn't have panic attacks, but they're like, my health is taking a hit and my doctor can't help me. Floor is yours.
Yes, I will definitely go there. And I want to add on to what you just shared, Frank, because the part of my family's dynamic that I didn't share yet is my husband. And he actually, around the same time, before my daughter, but shortly after my diagnosis, he had a very similar situation to what you described. He thought he was having a heart attack, and he literally was taken by ambulance from his office. He was a trader at the time and taken to the emergency room because of chest pain. And they ultimately ended up the official diagnosis was a panic attack, but it was very similar because he had spasming in his chest and his diaphragm. He's like I like broke out in sweats, and he's like I felt like I was so uncomfortable that I almost he's like, I never ever had suicidal ideation, but I almost contemplated like, I can't live like this anymore. And it was a variety of factors, which I'm going to talk about that all lead together to what is a holistically healthy way of being. I always look at it as like, what is your daily health rhythm that's going to be building health more than it is detracting health, right? Or creating disease. But so much of what he experienced, well, seemingly completely different than what I was experiencing with an autoimmune diagnosis and our daughter with seizures, they seem so disparate and isolated and different. Yet, if you understand the core of how these different systems function together in the body, our immune system, our cardiovascular system, our endocrine hormone system, digestive system, they all work like a symphony. And oftentimes we don't think of them in that way. We tend to think of them as isolated, separate, distinct things. Like if I have heartburn, that feels very different than if I have insomnia and can't sleep at night. But they may, in fact, have a similar root, a similar cause, if you will. And really, when I support women, there are three main areas that we look at in order to kind of run like a baseline assessment and to see how is the overall functioning of your health and vitality. The first is nutrient status, right? And that's because every single cell in the body, and we have billions of them, are nutrient dependent. It needs to have certain nutrients in order for the cell to do the job that it was designed to do. It's kind of like my car needs to have gas in the car before it can ever get on the road and drive me, go take me somewhere. So we do need to have a sense of like what are the status that an individual has, or what's the rhythm that they have for giving their cells every day of, a demand of the nutrients that are needed to live and do the functions that you're asking of it. And we can talk about a couple different things that affect nutrient status, in addition to just what foods are you eating? Because obviously, on a very top line level, everyone knows that they should eat more real whole foods and less highly processed chemicalized foods. That's very generic, but more specifically, what does that look like for an individual? The next area that's really important is what is the nervous system capacity? And what do I mean by nervous system? That's really how is your body signaling whether your physiology is running in fight or flight response, that what we think of sympathetic, dominant, fight or flight, prepare to fight, flee, or free, or is your body toggling and operating in a parasympathetic state where it's like, hey, okay, my needs are being met, I'm not being threatened, everything is safe, so I can focus my energy and attention to restore, to digest, to absorb, to repair cells, right? So, kind of what is that nervous system balance there? That's the second main area besides nutrients. And then the third one is metabolism. How well can my cells take food substrate, nutrients essentially, and then use those nutrients to convert them into energy? Because ultimately, if they can convert it into energy at a cellular level, then your cells can do an effective job. And you have a lot of, you know, focus, you have mental clarity, you have the ability to be creative and patient and thoughtful. You have also the ability to properly fuel your cells and be able to lift things, all the things that we think of that you want to do. If you have strength, if you have resilience, if you have patience, if you have influence, these skills require energy to be able to do those things. So I look at those kind of core foundations as what is our nutrient status in the body? What is our nervous system balance and profile? And what is the metabolism capacity? And that kind of gives us a functional health of the individual.
Mm. Well, And by the way, just quick aside, if you ever wanted, you mentioned your husband and the panic attack thing. First of all, I'm jealous because they didn't tell me that. But second, if you ever walk into a hospital and you say to the emergency room, you say, I have chest pain, you go right to the front of the line. I did learn
Mhm.
that.
Yes.
So just a hair of a hint. Oh, yeah, right to the front. But when it comes to all these different systems, a lot of people are overwhelmed by that.
Hmm.
And I remember when I started learning some of the very terminology you just used, endocrine as as an example word. It's like we didn't learn that in health class growing up.
Hmm.
It's like all these systems that we didn't even think about. The word thyroid, which is in your book that we'll talk about later. Like it was like, oh, what's a thyroid, right? Like so, you just a lot of these words you just didn't even hear, and so at first it's a little bit overwhelming. So when somebody comes to you for help, how do you help them
Hmm.
get past the over? First you got the overwhelm of what's going on, but if you just start throwing all these words out, it's like you're almost like layering it on. For some people, like some people are
Yes.
very technical, they'll absorb it, but some people are like, big words, oh my gosh. How do you
Yes.
help, how do you minimize? How do you help people pass that? Because the reality is, just like our entrepreneurial challenges, we may not be using medical words, but it's the same flow.
Hmm.
Unfamiliar, which can easily create overwhelm.
Overwhelm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so this is where having guidance, having support and mentorship can be helpful. So part of it is I would say in my work with clients, with women, it's a dual system of educating and empowering. So I do have opportunities for them to have, short little 10-minute training so that they can understand and make sense of some of the language, some of it's really it's learn it's kind of it is it's like learning a new language. It's learning how your body is actually working. And to your point, Frank, we weren't taught this information in school for a large part. Maybe we had a health class in high school and then very, very broad basics. But especially as women, once our hormones and our bodies start to shift and change, most of us have never been taught any of that. So it's really hard to partner with and feel like you can cooperate with your body to help it to, perform at a high level when you have no understanding, you have no idea of what you're working with. So part of it is an educational experience to see some of these ahas and these light bulbs clicking and being like, wow, that actually, this makes so much sense. Now I see why I'm struggling with mood swings or why I'm struggling at 3 p.m. every day. I'm like completely crashed and have no energy and have to grab that, second, third cup of coffee just to make it through the afternoon. It makes sense now that I have the deeper knowledge and understanding of what's happening in my body's physiology. So part of it is the learning. The other part of it is the filtering. Because let's be honest, we live in a time where there's no lack of information. You can put anything into Chat GPT and get bombarded, and that adds to the overwhelm. So this is where having somebody who can strategically guide you to what is relevant, important, and useful for your body and your life now is a game changer, right? Because we need to filter out a lot of the information. Otherwise, you can get stuck in the spin and stuck in the conflicting and overwhelming Google searches and Chat GPT, you know, prompts that you put in. So I do think this is where it's a differential. I actually look at, when it comes to, especially as a professional, as a business owner or an entrepreneur, we tend to put a lot of emphasis on our career as adults because we know that that is part of our livelihood, right? That's part of our financial well-being. Maybe it supports our family. It's part of our soul passion and the work that we're meant to do in this world. I truly believe that investing in your health in a more proactive and intentional way is a responsibility that we as thriving adults get to have, because it's not enough to just follow the trends and know what is common in our culture. The statistics show us that, 85% of Americans, once they reach age 65, have two or more lifelong disease diagnoses.
Hmm.
A study that came out of Mayo Clinic proceedings shared that only 3% of US adults are healthy, happy, and on track to stay that way by self-reporting metrics. So that means 97% of US adults are not healthy, are not happy, and do not believe optimistically about their future of health and happiness. So if we want to buck the trend and not become one of those sad statistics, it is our personal responsibility to take on more ownership, to become more knowledgeable, and to have some strategy around how we approach our health for the long term.
97%. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So if you take 100 people, there's a 97% chance that you're not one of the three that's on the right track.
Hmm.
That's kind of insane when I think about it. Because first of all, women, as we all know, are very hard working people. I mean, I think even most men, if not all men, would agree that nobody works harder than a mom. Nobody. I mean, and we can work as hard as we want as guys. The reality is no one works harder than a mom. And I think most people recognize it. There might be a few outliers out there, but I think generally speaking, we
Hmm.
know that's the hardest job in the world, to be a mom. So I'm
Hmm.
just thinking there, you're supporting women, they're moms, I'm sure in many cases, and now you're dealing with the overwhelm, and now there's this statistic that there's a 3% chance of being in the right place, the right time once you're at 65. And just that in itself feels overwhelming. Just the reality of pondering that. So these ladies, they come to you. What do they say? What's the first thing you hear most often?
That I've tried everything and I'm still not getting the results that I want for my health. I've tried the diets, I've tried the workout plans, I've tried the meditation, and I still feel exhausted. I still feel like my mind is racing and I'm carrying extra weight that drags me down.
So let me ask you this. I've tried everything. I think we've all been there. If we're an entrepreneur, you've probably said that more than once.
Hmm.
Even though we all know you never can truly try everything, but believing that in the moment is another story. How much and you're a woman of faith, how much does faith play into what you do?
That's a large part. I actually believe a lot of the journey for women and for men to optimize their health and their vitality is about a reconnection to their soul and a reconnection to self-love and self-acceptance. Because if I when I kind of peel back the layers of many of the reasons that women are struggling with their health, it's because of the day in and day out choices that they make around the foods that they're eating, right? Around their sleep rhythm, around their exercise or movement. So there are a lot of healthy habits that can be put on the back burner or deprioritized in a certain way. And another way of saying it is they haven't yet prioritized their well-being above other people's priorities or above other, especially women, right? I work with a lot of women above their kids, above their parents, above their spouses, other things that come for their careers that come first before they take care of their health and their vitality. So a huge piece of this is reconnecting to your soul, reconnecting to God's plans and what He sees as your potential, which happens when you are truly thriving, right? So it is absolutely a deeper layer of the work that we do, in addition to the physiology and the nutrients. It's like, well, what when I peel back layers and say, well, why isn't some of the nutritional choices happening? It's because of, a belief in lack of time, or just lack of desire and interest and all these things. So it's really stepping into, can I have the faith? Can I summon the faith that when I do prioritize my well-being in a new way, that it will create a different outcome, a different result. I will feel energized. I will feel confident. I will change how I show up, and that I can have the capacity to continue with this journey and to do it consistently.
So, for women of faith, makes sense. What do you say to that woman that maybe doesn't have a spiritual backing? She's not a person of faith. She's agnostic, atheist, whatever it is. Doesn't
Mhm.
believe in anything, but some people are like that. Like, how is it different for them? Does it become just more of the believe in yourself, or like what happens
Well,
there?
it's really, what's the why, right? It's the power of, why is this important to change your health? Because everything comes down to our reason why. And when you have a strong enough why, then it's possible to get creative and look for avenues to change your current reality. So it doesn't have to be, necessarily from a religious context that you are driven, or desiring transformation. But if not that, what is the reason why?
That why question, it'll mess you up. For some people, it's the easiest question to answer. For some people, it's the hardest. But I have also found that your why today might change.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people feel like once you know your purpose, that it should just be that way forever. By the same token, I've met women who they've raised their kids. Once the kids are adults, the first clue what they want to do.
Yeah.
It's like a why crisis. How much is that happen? How much of that do you come across in your work?
Oh, I actually like this topic, because this timing is something that I see very regularly in the work that I do, especially focusing on women over age 40. 40s and 50s, early 60s is primarily my clientele. And I do think it's not by coincidence that this is when a lot of women really start to see notable symptom changes in their health. Partly, we know there's a physiological change. Hormones are changing and declining and changing as we move into perimenopause and then into menopause. There's also, like you said, a cyclical season, a life cycle change. For many women, this is when their children are older and going off to college and living their own lives. So their purpose as mother, their role has shifted. They're still always going to be a mother, but their role and how that shows up on a day over day basis can look very different. And for many women, this is where there's a sense of, like you said, haziness, like lost purpose. I actually believe that that is part of the divine plan of, like, timing. That is when our body starts to have more symptoms, because our sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, naturally are lowering. When we don't have the buffer of some of those key hormones that I just mentioned, it makes our experience more sensitive. So we're more likely to have weight gain. We're more likely to have anxiety and mood swings. We're more likely to have achiness and aches and pains in the body and the joints. We're more likely to have insomnia. So many of these undesirable health symptoms crop up around that time that the hormone levels start to decline for women. And while, historically people are always like, oh, menopause, it's terrible, and there's like this bad rap, I'm changing the narrative and saying, like, what if this actually gets to be your new rebirth? What if this gets to be a new season for you as a woman? And that sensitivity, that increased sensitivity is actually there to help serve you because you can no longer kind of push through putting everyone else's agenda first before you take care of yourself. Your body's physiology won't let you do that anymore because you don't have those buffer hormones to kind of bear the brunt of that. Now you're going to feel it much more intensely. And
Mm,
because you do feel it much more intensely, you're going to have a more powerful motivator of reason why I want this to change. And that's where the learning comes into, hey, I can actually become somebody who's knowledgeable about how my body works. I want to be somebody who's partnering with my body and with my health to create a rhythm that's not only going to feel better in the short term, but it's going to set me up for decades of greater quality of life. I mean, we're talking about the work that we do gives women decades of increased life quality. Instead of reaching age 70 and kind of really being on the descent, many women are still thriving in their 80s, even in their 90s, and more decades to life to be able to, like I said, share your passion, influence others, lead, and be present with people that you care about most. So I think part of the opportunity here is with that sense of if women are saying, like, I'm feeling kind of lost, I don't have the same connection, I just feel like blasé and like just ugh, kind of lost my sense of self. I don't have this clarity and this inspiration and this passion or this energy. That's a to me that's an opportunity to say, hey, your body's signaling to you, your body's waving the red flag and saying, pay attention, lean in, learn more about me, learn more what you need, and help to heal some of these old patterns and change your relationship with how you prioritize yourself, change your relationship with self-love, change your relationship with time, perhaps, change your relationship with boundaries. And now you have a whole new horizon in front of you.
mm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's a shift. And so one of the shifts you talk about is to do exactly what you just said is you help women gain 3 hours of energy a day. And so, that's kind of tangible, 3 hours. But like how do you do that? And when you say 3 hours of energy a day,
Mhm.
is that a literal 3 hours of time, or is that a multiple in there or something? Like, what does that really mean, and the
Yes.
impact of that?
Well, the way we can like quantify that and really zone that in is most women don't realize it, but when we stop and do an inventory of how they're spending their time prior to doing this work and really healing their body and building health intentionally, they are spending at least, if not more than 3 hours a day where they are really kind of caught in a spiral of unwanted symptoms where they're feeling miserable, their energy is low, they're feeling, kind of disillusioned, discouraged, frustrated, overwhelmed, and or they use coping mechanisms to disassociate. So it's like whether it be like scrolling on social media, vegging out on Netflix. Sometimes it's even like it ends up being in fights or arguments with you know family members or colleagues or whatever, where there's not this clarity and this purpose and this presence to their days. And part of it is because their capacity, their energy levels are just tanked. And when you can help the physiology work better, the nervous system is regulated, the nutrients are, available and ready and on demand, and you have a high functioning metabolic function, your cells are working, you show up as a different person. So for at least those 3 hours, if some for some women it's even more, when they quantify how many hours in their day are they in a negative state of mind? Are they really just kind of distracting themselves and not focused, not clear on purpose? Then we shift that. It's like you open up this capacity for what is possible in your life, in your business, in so many areas, because now you have clarity, you have a game plan, you have focus, you just are in a positive mental and emotional state. It drastically changes your lived experience.
Mm. Isn't it amazing what an impact physiology has?
Hmm.
In particular, in a world that's become so technologically driven, where so much is done on your phone, tablet, at a computer desk, it almost seems counterproductive to have the tech and everything driving you to computerize work when in reality, there's less physiological change,
Hmm.
but yet that physiological change can drive the most change the fastest.
Yes.
So how do you help people get past that? So get up, move.
Part of it is the knowledge, right? So, and then this is where women are like, I've never, we all can hear it's the specificity, I think, and the um making it simple. So I'll give an example. I'll share a story. So a woman, Corey, that I'm working with now. So she was saying, like, I know, we all know and hear over and over and over to exercise and to move your body. That's good. That's healthy. That's something we should be doing, right? But she's an attorney, high-powered job, works between 8 and 9.5 hours a day, so long days, and commutes to the office at her desk. And she's like, okay, when I'm feeling like in the groove and I've got some energy, I will get up and get my workout in the morning before I sit down at my desk. But then she's in meetings for 8 hours straight, right? This is common for a lot of people, even entrepreneurs, if they're at their desk or doing a sitting mental job for multiple hours in a row. She had no idea that the way she was living her life in that capacity was actually very, very detrimental to her metabolism. And here's what I mean. Our metabolism responds to what's called consistent muscle contraction. So that means, yes, well, is it helpful to have a 45-minute or a 60-minute workout in the morning before you go to the office or before you start your workday? Sure, that's beneficial. But it's not nearly as impactful as if you are moving during the day at regular intervals, especially when you have a sedentary, kind of more of a cognitive job. So we set up a situation for her where she has certain appointments on her calendar, color coded a different color. She knows it's time to raise her desk and have her standing desk with a walking pad, a couple of breaks. And these, I'm talking 10-minute breaks. These are not long and disruptive things. She can still be having her meetings, can still be getting work done. But the whole physiology of her moving in a different way throughout her day radically changed her metabolism. She actually cut her morning workout so she could sleep in later. So she saved 30 minutes in the morning, changed her movement patterns to be spread out during the day, and was able to release another 10 pounds simply by working with her physiology instead of staying stuck in the old mantra of, oh, just go get the exercise and wearing herself out by getting up early and not getting a good night's sleep. So again, some of it is the knowledge, the education of really understanding how your body is working. And then it's the specificity of like, okay, let's look at your actual life and let's see your day-to-day situation. How can we come up with a game plan to set you up for success in a simple way?
You said a walking pad?
Mhm.
Is that like a mini treadmill or
It's kind of
something?
like a treadmill where it's, yeah, where you can walk while you're just standing at your desk.
So I've seen those things that you like the desk thing that elevates the desk up higher.
Mhm.
And I've actually contemplated doing this show because we actually have that set up on a computer in our office, and I was like, maybe I should do these standing up.
Yes.
So,
It would be great for you metabolically speaking, because the more you move throughout the day, I mean, I'm a stats girl. Another study showed that they had three different groups of people. One was a group that walk, and they just did walking because walking is a consistent metric that they can use to measure movement. One group walked for 60 minutes first thing in the morning, and then it had a sedentary desk or job all day. One group walked for 20 minutes after each meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, for so 60 minutes total during the day, but again, three different intervals. The third group walked for 2 minutes roughly every 30 to 40 minutes throughout their day. So short intervals. Guess which one had the best um, blood sugar management and the best metabolic health?
I'm going to guess the last one.
Yep, by far. Because metabolically speaking, the body is in a completely different state when you're moving consistently during the day as opposed to being sedentary most of the day.
So I just need to get up and run every 5 minutes, and we are rocking and
You,
rolling.
you know what my cue is? Because I do drink a lot of water, Frank. I mean, again, staying hydrated is really important. So while I'm drinking water throughout the day, I do have a standing desk too, so some appointments are up. But my cue is the door frame of my office. I always have to walk to the restroom and then walk back. Every time I come through the door frame, it's just a reminder for me. It's like a visual reminder to do 10 body weight squats and a couple of like twists and moves, just a couple things. It takes like 90 seconds, if that, every time before I come and sit down. But there's just like a built-in pattern. If you know, like if I'm going to the bathroom, I'm walking through the door, I do the movement pattern. And that's just it's just gonna add in that muscle contraction. These
Well,
are
and the
simple
thing
things that you
is,
can do.
if you're working 8 hours a day, you could easily take, and I'm just saying this arbitrarily, you could take 5 minutes of every hour and do some. Because the reality is, about every hour, for some people it's 90 minutes, the brain wants a minute anyway. So you could totally just program that in.
And that's exactly they actually find my clients when they do this, find that they actually perform at a higher level because exactly what you said, your brain needs that reset. Your physiology works better and you will be more creative. You will be more in fact impactful when you do that.
So my challenge is this is a 1 hour long power cast. Will I still be creative the last 5 minutes? Now I'm challenging myself.
Yes.
So you've built this practice empowering women, above 40 in particular. And I want to ask you something about the under 40 age, but we'll come back to that in a moment. But what is it you think you're doing differently that keeps your clients winning long term and coming back to you again and again?
Great question. What I do differently than most health practitioners, especially even in the traditional medical arena and even in the functional medicine arena, is we talk about the nutrients, we talk about the nervous system, we talk about, getting a sense of understanding your body in a different way. Another piece that we haven't tapped into yet is rewiring the brain, infusing neuroscience into the work, because so much of what dictates our habits and our patterns, our daily choices, is unconscious. It's the programs that we have received from early childhood all the way through life, and that we just become habitual creatures of habit. So, when we talk about that durable, sustainable, decades long health change, it requires a change in the programs, a change in the identity of who we see ourselves to be and our daily choices and decisions. So that piece that I haven't, previously alluded to is it's rewiring, using neuroscience to rewire the brain so that you now have a different identity of who you are, how you see yourself, and that dictates how you show up day in and day out.
Mm. So we've talked about your focus on 40 and over, but you shared earlier you had your challenge. You were in your early 30s. I think you said 33, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you work with the under 40 crowd? Like, I mean, is it just the same? You just don't get as many of them, or you just don't focus? Like, what's going on
Great
there?
question. I definitely have had referrals. I've had many women who've referred to me their friends and daughters and colleagues. So I have supported women and even some men too under outside of that demographic 40s and 50s and early 60s. I will say that the 40 plus women are by far the most common women that I support simply because of what I shared earlier. That is the time in our life where our hormone levels are changing. And that highlights unwanted health symptoms in a big way for many women. So it's kind of like where that becomes a big enough motivator to be like, oh, this is not sustainable. I want something different. I want something. And it's usually when there's a little bit of change in the priority of like kids are getting a little bit older. So it really is an opportunity for that. group of women to raise their hand in a large number. But I said the core foundation of what we talked about is like nutrient level, nervous system support, and metabolic function is what helped heal my husband. It's what healed my daughter, healed myself. So at the physiological level, the approach is universal with the customization built in for that individual. But like I said, I just really am passionate about helping women because AI can relate to them. I have been in those shoes and I just kind of crashed and burned a little early. For me, it happened in my early 30s, as opposed to some women are fortunate they can make it till they're 40, 45, and then they're like, okay, now I've I've kind of hit a threshold that I want to change this trajectory.
So the approach is the same for each of the age groups. You just know going in with the younger ones, there might be some tweaks just because of
Mhm.
where they are, their stage of life, or right, and the things that go along with that. So, okay, cool,
Yes.
cool. Let me ask you this. I want to go back in time, but before I do, I want to ask you something. When you look at your success you've had in your business, and you're also a speaker, and you're an author of the book, well, that we're going to get to, what accomplishment so far makes you feel the most proud?
That's a great question. I mean, honestly, it's like it's the little moments. It's when Mariam said to me, I just want to thank you so much because I was the kind of mom who was always anxious and was very hesitant to, with my kids and with myself, to say yes to things. And she's like, and it sounds silly, but she's like, this was this past summer. I was out and said we were on a friend's boat and out on the water for the day. And they asked if I wanted to go tubing. And she's like, my former self would have never in a million years said yes because I would have been afraid about falling off and the seaweed and all the things that could go wrong. And she's like, but I just have a new sense of like confidence and optimism and like kind of zest for life. And she's like, I said yes. I was scared. I said yes, and I went and she went with her daughter, and she's like, and it was such a blast. Like those are the little moments that actually change somebody's life. It's really about encapsulating her completely different perspective and confidence and like I said, that just that like joy in life that she's able to access, whereas before that wasn't even on a possibility in her life, right? So those moments, or another client, Kelly, who told me, like, thank you, you saved me from having surgery. She was going to have a lumpectomy surgery because of a tumor found in her breast, and using the approach that we look at is helping the body to naturally heal, to heal itself. She was able to shrink the tumor, saved not only the mental anguish of fear of, future diagnosis and what this means, but also the sense of empowerment of like, wow, I really did create this change in my body. I affected and
Mm.
created this transformation, and I can see tangible results when the doctor says no surgery needed anymore, like tumor's gone, right? So those types of things are really, really like warm my heart and are fulfilling. Um, and then there's like kind of a billboard, like I mean when I was on when my book was up on New York Times Square billboard, that's like kind of the fun like perk for me moments as well. But yeah, I really think it's the heartwarming pieces and the little moments that change change lives.
So let me ask you, kind of piggybacking off of that, you used the term little moments, but I don't know that I would agree with the word little moments because when you just help somebody improve something in their body that they didn't even think that was doable.
Mhm.
So I don't know. To me, that's a big moment, but I get
Oh yeah,
it.
maybe I should rephrase it. The big moments,
You're being
but
a little
yeah.
modest there. But on a more macro level, I'm hearing you tell that story. It's like, okay, I helped somebody in this thing that could have really been negative
Mhm.
has been neutralized, improved. They're in a better place. And I've heard that story before, and in the world of holistic health. If we go to traditional health, and we're not going to beat up on our regular doctors because they have a purpose as well, absolutely. But at what point, it seems like this idea of fusing traditional medicine and holistic health, I'm seeing it a little bit, but it's very slow. Like where I live, I type in holistic doctor just as a search.
Hmm.
And I'm in Atlanta, so I'm not exactly in a small area.
Sure.
There's not a lot of them where when you go to their website and you're like, okay, this is a true holistic doctor. You are starting to see where some traditional doctors are using that terminology, but it's
Hmm.
very much in the minority. In your opinion, why isn't there more fusing of these two worlds when clearly there's room for both where more people can win?
Hmm. In my opinion, great question. I think it's going to continue to shift. And I think the reason it has been the way it has is for so long, the ownership and the financial responsibility has been disconnected. What I mean by that, in the American culture for many generations, a bulk of the financial responsibility, at least the conscious financial responsibility, was paid through insurance. And insurance uses coding, which ties to doctors' diagnosis, honestly. Part of it is like I have many friends that are conventional doctors, and I have a great deal of respect for their training, for their expertise, for their service, but they have handcuffs. They're very restricted with how they can support and in what capacity and what duration of time and what codes they have to bill for. So the system itself has a very limited structure. And as long as the consumer, the individual, relies on insurance as their primary vehicle of healthcare, then you're going to be limited to what can be covered and paid for and provided in that model. So I think as more and more consumers, individuals, are placed in a situation of like, this isn't getting the job done. Actually isn't creating the solutions and bringing me to where I want to go. So I'm willing to pay outside of my employer provided healthcare or outside of my, business um, self-insurance. I'm willing to pay with my conscious dollars for my proactive health. There's more personal ownership and more personal responsibility in that relationship. And that's when you can really see somebody who's invested and ready and willing to look at things from a proactive standpoint. So I think we're shifting in that direction, but I do think a lot of it comes down to it's not wrong or right. I mean, there was a great initial thought around having majority of our healthcare needs be provided by insurance-based companies that were usually tied to our employers. But that's also very limiting in the factor of like you don't have as much discretionary control, you don't have as much personal stake and ownership in how those dollars are being utilized and the effectiveness of those dollars. But now as you kind of bring it into more of the individual arena, that's where I think it shifts.
No, no, that makes sense. When I think of when I went to in fact, my experience that I mentioned earlier, that's how I was introduced to holistic care.
Hmm.
I think about chiropractic.
Hmm.
I had a ringing in my ear once, and the ENT said it'll be there forever. One visit to the chiropractor, gone.
Yes.
I mean, it's a real world experience, but that's personal to me. And I think to myself, it's hard sometimes to hold traditional medicine in high accord when you pay an ENT and he tells you you're gonna have a ringing in your ear for the rest of your life. You go spend $50 and in one chiropractor visit, it's gone. And by the way, that was over a decade ago. It's never come back.
Hmm.
And you sit there and you're just like, I used to have really bad allergies until I went holistic, and I realized diet reduced it probably 90+%.
Hmm.
And I just sit there and I think, how long do we go? So the work you do with women, it's fantastic. It's incredibly powerful because you're putting the power
Yes.
into that. into the, to use your word, the responsibility back to the individual.
Hmm.
And the crazy thing is, you were talking about insurance, which we're not getting insurance, right? That's its own little three-headed monster, but it has its place, but shit can be messy.
Hmm.
But so many of the things you talk about, you don't even need medicine for. You don't need money.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
still got to buy groceries every week. You can
Hmm.
still exercise. You can work on your mind. That costs nothing other than perhaps working with someone like yourself.
Hmm.
It's 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 really just daunting sometimes that the world hasn't shifted more quickly into the holistic world because it's a win. It's a
Hmm.
win for everybody. Everybody wins. Maybe the pharmaceuticals don't win as much, but that's okay. They'll sell their medicine to somebody, right? I'm always just blown away by it. So let me ask you, you used to consult people on wealth when you were at Deloitte,
Hmm.
and now you're consulting people. Did you when you I mean effectively when you were teaching people about wealth or consulting people, you're basically teaching them. Now you're
Hmm.
teaching people about their health.
Health. Yes.
Do you find that people, how can I word this? Do you find that people are more receptive to learning about their health than all the other
Mm.
subjects that we believe and think are super important? For example, when you're in wealth or talking about money, well, money is important. Well, no one's going to say money's not important. But if you don't have your health, right? I've never met someone who's seriously ill that's sweating money. That's generally
Right.
not
Right.
in their mind. But do you follow what I'm saying? It's like,
That's it. It is interesting. So it's funny because logically, if you asked an individual, most people would say, how important is your health to you? How important is your wealth to you? They would say both of those are very important. And yet, there's a lot of inner resistance that gets in the way of the choices and the actions that we all take, myself included. Like I was living this life, right? Part of it was I didn't know what I didn't know about my choices and decisions that were leading to ultimately what create the dynamic that created my autoimmune diagnosis, right? I think on some level we have, like if you're talking about health, we know, or if we're talking about health, okay, we know that if we eat real food and we move our bodies and we sleep decent, we should have good health. But usually that's not quite dialed in enough, or you haven't really honed in of like what are the barriers for you? What is actually creating dysfunction in your body? Because if those aren't happening consistently, there's some dysfunction happening. Same thing with wealth, right? It's the same strategies around how to have a balanced portfolio, how to think about our investment and our tax saving strategies. So again, there could be a lot of complexity there, but it's about learning and understanding how to optimize those. It was the same thing that I used to do with clients from a wealth perspective to help them to feel empowered, to help them feel um, like they have an impact and they can actually be proactively building the future that they desire. Now I do that in the health space as well. So I don't know what was your question again? I'm sorry. I kind of was just seeing the correlations between the two.
I don't know. Yeah, if anything, let me ask you a different one because you kind of fed another thought here. You hear people talk about the secret to success in business and so forth. One of my favorite ones that I heard was the simple phrase, stop fighting life. Three very powerful words, I thought. Of course, when I heard that, I remember thinking, well, that's actually in the Bible. It's just worded different. Count it all joy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different words, but it means the same thing. If we count everything as joy,
Mm-hmm.
we're good. But could the secret of success, in your opinion, as a holistic doctor, and I've never thought about this till we're having this conversation, that if we get our health, because without health we ain't gonna have a whole lot of anything. If we can get
Mm-hmm.
our health right, and we get our spirituality right, who we are on the inside, does everything else become easier at that point?
I mean, I would say yes.
Because you see people working on wealth as the primary focus,
Hmm.
and some of them even succeed, a lot don't.
Hmm.
But I've met numerous people that were wealthy with all kinds of health problems.
Yes.
Seen that story more than a few times.
Yes,
But the
definitely.
people that, go ahead.
And I was saying sometimes even if they have wealth and they may not have health or they may not have purpose, they feel like almost devoid inside. It's just, but you're right. The people who genuinely, there's like a, and it comes back to the, I use the term energy, but to me that's kind of like your life force. It's really there's a correlation with how well your mitochondria can function and how much zest, connection, like presence in your life you experience. It's like having each moment be witnessed in its fullest capacity. That happens when you have the physiological capacity to notice more around you. But when your body is struggling, that's just not even, you're not even capable of it. It's like trying to ask my 2-year-old to go run a marathon who's just barely trying to like take 10 steps across the room. Those things, those inputs do not match, right? So it's like
Mhm.
we have to give ourselves the vessel, the physiology, the body to even be able to have the experience of life that we are seeking. And it's interesting because a lot of times we think it's all money related. The money will give us the life enjoyment or fulfillment or happiness. And let's it could make things a lot easier in many regards, but it can also, to your point, if you don't have your health and you have all this money sitting in the bank, you're still not going to be
Well, you can
really.
have all the money, pay for the best doctors, but if you don't execute,
Mhm.
you still got to execute. Whether you have the best doctor or the worst, either, health is still about that responsibility to execute
Mhm.
on what you need to do.
Yes.
And yeah, yeah. So let me ask you one more question. We didn't really talk a lot about corporate path and some of the past, but that's okay. This was very fascinating. But you have walked the corporate path before, and now you're walking the holistic path.
Hmm.
What is your true definition? I'm sorry, not your true definition, your personal definition of true wealth today, having lived in both worlds?
Ooh, what is my definition of true wealth? I would say it's being able to enjoy the people I am with, engaging activities that light me up, and witnessing and observing those special moments in my life. And when I can do those things consistently, I'm living a full life.
Hmm. It's not complicated. I love it.
Being with people you love, doing the things you love, and enjoying the moment.
I love it. Love it. Well, Amanda, this interview has not gone the way my little guide was going to go, and that's okay. It's been very wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you sharing with our listeners your insights. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Amanda, she's got a book. First of all, I forgot to mention it, Thyroid and
Yes,
Hormone Solution book. There it is on the screen for
the
those of you
thyroid.
watching on video. Check that out. Um, but if you want to connect with her, if you maybe you got some health challenges, we'll have her information below on her website or social media. Feel free to connect with her, and she can help you out. I have no doubt about it. So, Amanda, I want to thank you again for being on the show today. It's been an absolutely lovely conversation. Can you leave us with a final word?
Yes. Well, so first of all, thank you, Frank. It's been very fun, and I always love when these kind of more spontaneous conversations unfold. So I appreciate that. And the final word I would share with your listeners is you are capable of even greater health than you probably realize. So say yes to the opportunity.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you again, Amanda. I look forward to continuing the conversation.